with ICQB, I'm also chair of the Process Management and Audit Group. So basically, we define all the processes for the ICQB boards to use, and also undertake audits on the boards to make sure they're compliant. And I've also just recently taken over the role of looking after accreditation for TMI for the foundation. Okay? So that's why I've got very little hair now, I think, doing all that. So what I want to talk to you today about is about failures, basically. Why things go wrong, but why we need to look at failures in a different way and actually become successful from our failures. So I want to explain that learning from your experiences through failures can be managed to bring about success in your work. I want to challenge you to think about failure, any failure you've had, in a different way, and to create an awareness that failure should actually be regarded as a positive every single time, not a negative. I want you to appreciate that not all failures are equal, and also how the failure sits alongside process improvement and how risk management fits into this as well. So quite a lot to get through in a short space of time. Now it's quite interesting because this talk I'm going to give you, I first did about a year ago, and it had to be a 20-minute talk. I was asked to do it as a track session. Then I asked to do it as a half-day tutorial, and now in October I'm doing this as a full-day tutorial. So if you want to come to Johannesburg in October and do this as a full-day tutorial with lots of exercises and practical stuff to demonstrate this, I'd love to see you. So there's a lot for me that I can talk about in here, and so my challenge is try to condense it into the short time that I have. I put up little things that I love this. Fail. Your first attempt in learning. See? Positive message. So what is failure? As you heard from earlier on, I always like to start with a definition because it makes it very clear what we're talking about. So failure could mean different things, different people, depending on your perspective, depending on your working, etc. But what I've come up with is this definition, which says failure is the state or the condition of not meeting a desirable or intended objective, and may be viewed as the opposite of success. Product failure ranges from failure to sell the product, or in the worst case, personal injury. And we've got failure to anticipate, failure to perceive, failure to carry out the test. So that's putting the boundary of what I want to talk about. I like this when the Oxford Dictionary states failure as lack of success. And I put there, ouch, because that's a bit strong, isn't it? You're saying you're not successful, therefore you are a failure. And I think it's the other way around. I was at a client site a while ago in Belgium, and in the lobby area they had these TV monitors which talk about the services of their company. Okay? And this screen comes up, and it says, failure is not an option. And I thought, whoa, that's quite powerful. And I was thinking, well, I understand what they're trying to say. You know, we produce really good application, we produce really good software, we do good testing, so that our stuff doesn't fail. We're going to do it so well, it's not going to break. I understand that. But I also look at that and say, actually, failure is an option, because it's the way we learn from it and we can grow from it. So why do we fail? I mean, we could have a good brainstorming session and come up with many reasons why we fail in things. And this is just an example of some of the things which can cause us to fail. We have the wrong objectives. We're not listening, not observing, not communicating. We have preconceived ideas what the application should look like and how it should work. We have authority getting in the way sometimes, saying you've got to do this, this, and this, and this, without fully understanding the ramifications of all their decisions. can be lack of focus, lack of time and budget. The goals are too far reaching, they're too excessive, we just can't achieve them. Or it could be lack of skill and knowledge. So when we fail, it's not just down to one thing. It could be a number of different things which causes us problems and issues. So why do we fear failure? Why do we worry about the word failure? Well, failure has created a bad feeling from a young age. When we're at school, we learn that to fail in a test or anything we do is bad. So from a very early age, we're ingrained that failure is got the connotation of something which is bad. Failure can lead to blame, low marks, ridicule. You know, if you've done badly in a test and you've all done very well, you know, people can make fun of the person who's not done very well. They always ridicule. And sometimes as we grow up, we don't shift from that perception of failure that we've learned at childhood. We've had 12 years of training to fear failure. And so it's in our mindset. And as people get into management, that concept sits with them still. Sometimes we fear failing before we even start. How many of you have decided you're going to go and do something and you think to yourself, oh, do you know, I'm not going to do very well here. I'm really not very happy, I'm quite nervous about it. And you fear that you're going to fail before you've even had a go. Now, this can be where we aim low sometimes. When my son was looking for a university, you know, you've got different grades of university and everything like this. And he said to me he wanted to aim for one of the top universities. And I said, that's a good goal. We aim for the best. And I said to him, you may not get it, you might get just below it, but you'll still do well. My late mother-in-law, on the other hand, said to him, you'll never get there. She said, you'll never get to that sort of university. You should be looking at this type of university. And I said, you can't say that, because if you aim down there, you're going to go there. If you aim up here, you could get there. If not, you'll just get just underneath there. So we should be always aiming for the best that we can do, but not beat ourselves up if we don't quite make it. We also fear other people's view of us, and this can lead to a lack of confidence. If I said to you now, I want one of you to come up here and talk to us for the next 30 minutes on something, you go. Some of you might go, oh, or you might think, yeah, I'll do it. But why would that be? You're thinking, people think, what a stupid person, what are they talking about? And you almost fear what people are going to think about you. You fear what sort of response you're going to get, or they're going to go out of the door and say, God, do you see what they talked about? So sometimes we fear what other people think about us, and that can damage our confidence. And we imagine that others care as deeply about our success and failures as we do personally. So let's just think, if I came up here and I was going to do the talk to you now, but before I came in, I just thought to myself, you know, I'm really not happy about this. I haven't got very much to say. You won't enjoy it. You'll go away thinking, what a fool. How am I going to feel? And at the end of the day, do you care about it? You'll go home and just say, he's spoken a load of rubbish, but never mind. You're going to carry on. You're not going to lose sleep tonight about it, are you? The thing is, whenever we do something, we worry that people care as much as we do personally about what we do. And that's just simply not true. It's our own personal opinions. And we fear shame, and our response can manifest itself in many, many different ways. So overall, failure can and has created negative connotations. It's created that negative vibe, in effect. So how should we see failure? Well, organisations really need to make this a safe place be able to admit failure and report failure. With the right mindset, the concern that accepting failures will lead to poor quality is not relevant. In fact, Astro Teller from Google X says, "You must reward people for failing. If not, they won't take risks and make breakthroughs. If you don't reward failure, people will hang on to a doomed idea for the fear of consequences. That wastes time and saps an organisation's spirit." In other words, if you find some defects, some bugs, some faults in applications, the application fails, instead of saying, "What are you doing?" it's like, "Well done, you found a failure." If something goes wrong, you should be praised. "Well done, you found that problem, we can fix it, we can get it right now." And actually, as I say, in Google X, they actually reward people. When they find the failures, there's like, I don't think there's actual monetary reward, but there's other rewards to say, "Well done, thank you for doing that." And we need to have this mindset where we recognise that failure is going to happen and we say thank you for finding it. Because if you don't find it, the customer's going to find it. The Harvard Business Review, they did some research and they've actually come up with a spectrum of reasons for failure. And I'll show you that slide. It's not particularly easy to see, but you can actually always Google that and find this anyway. We also want to recognise that no one deliberately wants to fail. I can't imagine for 1 minute that you going into work on Monday thinking, "I'm going to fail today. I've got real problems. I'm just not going to make it." I can't imagine you do that. You're not going to deliberately cause problems. It's like if you've got a developer, I don't believe that they're deliberately going to put defects into code. I don't believe any developer sits there coding away thinking, "Oh, I feel a bug coming on here," and put it in. It happens. It happens. People make mistakes. So nobody deliberately wants to fail. We also learn from failure with the intention, as I said, that we can learn from that. And one of the great ways of doing that is your retrospectives, or your lessons learned. We look and say, what went well, what problems did we have, and how can we resolve those problems next time round? How can we get better to avoid those problems? We should also see failure as a way to learn and grow from the experience. We're learning from that experience so we don't make those mistakes again. I can always remember a classic story where there was a project manager and he went way over budget, way over time, and he knew that it was his fault because of certain things that he did. And he was going to get called into his boss's office, and he knew that when he was going in there, he thought, "I'm going to get sacked, I'm going to lose my job." So he thought, well, I'm going to prepare for this, and he actually decided he was going to resign. So he went into the boss's office and he said, "Don't say anything, I know what you're going to do, have this instead." And he put his resignation on the desk. And the boss said, "What's that?" And he said, "That's my letter of resignation." And he said, "Why are you resigning?" He said, "Well, I've made all these mistakes, I've cost the company money, I've cost the company time." And he said, "Yeah, you did. Have you learned from that? Are you going to make those mistakes again?" He said, "Well, of course not, I've learned from that." He said, "Fine, take that letter back and get back to work." He said, "Yes, that's cost money to the company, but put that down as training, as experience." And he said, "I know that you will never make that mistake again. If I let you go and I got a new project manager in, they could make the same mistake again. They could make me lose money and time again, but I know that you won't. So go on, get back to work and get going." And that's the attitude we need to think about. Forget perfection. We always strive for the best, 100% of everything. Instead, what we should be looking for is failing well. In other words, we take risks and we learn from them. It helps you find those gaps and put the actions into place to fix it. We also have to be resilient and keep trying. We practice. A lot of this talk was inspired once from a radio programme that I heard on BBC Radio 4. And it was called The Value of Failure. So immediately I thought, this is interesting, what's this about? And it took the arts, sport, the military, and business, and 5 different industries, basically, where people learned how to be successful from failures. So how many of you here are musicians? Do any of you play an instrument? Yeah, what do you play? The guitar. Brilliant. Did you bring it? Shame. But now my guess is that when you learned the guitar, you made some pretty bad notes.
Yeah, in the beginning.
At the beginning, yeah. You all right now?
Working in his own little workspace, and this is a code line pattern for a developer. And so he's got his own private version going of these bubbles, okay? So he's going to take the latest bubble and he's going to pull it into his private workspace. And he's going to be working on that. I really need a marker for this because this is a pictorial thing. Duncan, can you get me a marker? Just pop out and ask.
You enjoyed doing that.
Yes. The problem with the code line, and this is a common failure on projects everywhere. If you're not practicing good C. Oh, Duncan, wait, she's got one. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. See, you must see the picture. Okay, this is version 2, this is version 3, this is version 4. Okay, so the developer sets up his own workspace and he begins his own code line, okay? So this is version 1, this is version 1.1, but that doesn't coordinate with this, does it? This is where you can really get into trouble. Okay, so if I'm a tester, am I going to be testing over here in the developer's workspace?
No.
No. Why?
This is not official.
This is not official, right? So in a pair programming situation where you have a developer and tester working very close together, that's fine over here. And then when the testing is done over here, then you can merge it or wherever it's supposed to be. It might be here, it might be here. Sorry. But this is called his workspace. And so inside that workspace, these are the tasks that continue to go on. And if you look at Burzek and Appleton's books, they preach this about software CM. I like their sense of humor when they start talking about software CM. I take software CM very seriously. I did it for 9 years, and I can tell you, it can be very easy, it can be very hard. But if you don't understand it, you can really put the project in severe jeopardy. I've actually had to pull different versions of code to defend court cases on software. So a software CM person, I do not recommend you combining that role. Test and QA, depending on the size of the team, I could see you combining those roles. But software CM is so serious. There's a lot at stake. And there are many quotes. One of them is from Alistair Cockburn, and he says that too many projects overlook their software CM and their test tools, and then they come up short. And when I say come up short, I mean jobs lost, profits lost, companies go bankrupt. So the more serious you can take your role, whatever your role is, the better off your company is going to be. Okay, so there's more in this book regarding workspaces and code lines and software CM. Anybody have a particular affinity or liking for software CM? Does anybody understand it or not understand it and you want to understand software CM? I'm sorry, I can't see that. Oh, yes.
10 minutes.
Okay, 10 minutes. Okay, so this is from Lisa's book about automated building and testing. Okay, let's talk about Agile for a minute. Remember I said that Agile is a development methodology. It's a software development life cycle. Many people want to know more about Agile. So when I say the Agile Manifesto is your marching orders, that's your abstract concept of what Agile is. The 12 principles are your guidelines. But remember, customization and tailoring is allowed. In your culture, you tend not to tailor or customize. It's okay if you do, provided whoever you're creating your product for allows it. For instance, let's go back to the pacemaker and air traffic control and airplanes. You can't do that with those things. Whatever standard you're working to, you must adhere to that standard. If that standard says each of your roles is an individual person, every role is an individual person. If the standard says, no, you're allowed to combine QA and test, then you can combine those roles. But if you are not bound by a standard, tailoring and customization is allowed. And it's also encouraged. Because if you, as a critical thinker, can examine roles on your project and examine workflows and understand, each of you understands what the other is doing, you may be able to make suggestions to your managers and your leads to save the company money. But I caution you to be very careful about your suggestions. Make sure that the product is not life-threatening or will not damage equipment. Those are the two areas you have to be very cautious on. And there are some examples in this presentation, American Airlines air crashes where people, I call it the challenge of seeing and the challenge of not seeing. Training manuals were incomplete. A pilot applied too much pressure on the rudder and the tail of the aircraft split off. Someone should have seen that, but someone didn't. A training manual got loose, given to the end user, something was wrong, and 213 people paid with their lives for that. I give another example. Okay, so back to Agile. You'll hear the term Scrum and Sprint. Sprint is a short time frame, normally 30 days. So your whole life cycle takes place in 30 days. That's a really short amount of time to collect requirements, to create test cases, to get the code developed, to actually run all your testing, to determine if you're doing automated testing or manual testing, and then do a formal buy-off. That is a short amount of time. So I think you've witnessed this with several of the speakers today, where they've talked to you about doing Duncan, reflective project morning stand-up meetings, project reflectives. In those meetings is when you're allowed to say what your progress is, what your plans are, what your problems are. If you need management's help, that's your problems. If your progress is, hey, I ran 110 automated tests today and they all passed, that's your progress. What's your plan? Well, on my schedule today is to configure the tool to establish all of these other automated tests. That's your plans. We learned years ago to use the PQ method. PQ, plans, progress, problems. These are simple half-page or note cards that you can do every day for your morning stand-up meeting so that you're prepared to go into your morning stand-up. The other thing is, and these are called project reflectives, retrospects. And this is part of Agile, that you do this. These are very, very important. And before I forget, take a look. When you're looking for my presentation, look for Philip Liu, Philiplew. Look for Philip Liu's presentations. He did one yesterday on the 7 habits of highly effective agile testers. It's very succinct, but it's very good. It will give you some excellent information into any environment, agile or not. And then if you saw his keynote where he talked about customer service, very good. Specific, there are correlations between the two presentations, but you can take good advice into your environment from his presentations. Okay. These are questions for lessons for the Agile team. Again, what is important is that you know and understand each other's roles, that you respect your team members. I heard somebody in my session on Monday say, well, in our project retrospects, we get a lot of arguments. If an argument is going on between 2 people and there are 12 people in the room, those 2 people need to take it offline. Take it outside, discuss it outside, and let the other 10 people get on with their project retrospective, okay? And then one of those people can bring their lessons learned back to the group. But don't be stymied by that, because a project retrospective every morning, the morning meeting, should take 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the size of the team, okay? Let's see. Understand what's being delivered and to whom. Understand who your customer is, as my husband is it favors the response. Sometimes your customer is another computer, okay? Which means you have an interface. Did you know about the interface and the architecture? Things to understand. Understand the aspects of where development tests are taking place. Understand your SEM and product deliveries, how they take place and where. Understanding how the disciplines of CMQA, test, and so forth take. I'm losing my place here. Understand how those roles, those disciplines function individually as well as when the roles are combined. And again, there's no I in team. Most importantly, how a product turns out is an indicator of the people who produced it. So as I said on Monday, your product, your end user, deserves your conscientiousness, okay? Excuse me for appearing like a preacher, but when you think about it, your very existence on project, you owe to your customer. And the other thing you owe to your customer as a result of your process is a working product, right? Because isn't that what software development is all about? Producing working products. So how you get there is what I call the minutia of process. But once you deliver a product, you should be very proud of what you've delivered. Okay. A lot of, here's my suggestions. Here's Alistair's comment about software configuration management and automated regression testing tools. So, okay, I don't have time to step through the roles. I'm already blown through my time. So, again, I encourage you to get a copy of the presentation. And then if you don't understand something, ask me please in email. And you can actually point to the slide. You can snapshot it and send it to me and say, I don't understand this, Laura. Explain this for me. There's some really good advice in here. Simple things. And I only put key takeaway points for testers, for developers, and managers in here. Why do you think that is? Because CM and QA are often not on project. Testers, developers, and managers often rule the roost. So the takeaway points for them, specifically for testers, is ensure your testware is under CM control. And testware is one of those definitions you need to go and check. Okay. Assist, not hinder the delivery efforts. Does everybody know what ROI is? Return on investment, yes. So your user, your end user, your customer is asking for a return on their investment. And that's where your conscientiousness and your day-to-day efforts come in. They want a return on investment. And then, don't you deserve a return on your investment of time and energy? Yes? Yes, I see a lot of nods. Yes, yes. Developers often thumb their noses at software CM. Oh, I don't have to do that. Yes, you do. Because if you are over here working in your workspace, and this happened, okay? Microsoft, a guy pulled off with a mainline code in his workspace. He didn't care about CM, QA, test. He didn't care. And he put malware in it. And it was released to the customer, all of us. And then we made a mad scramble with McAfee and Norton and all the other antivirus to try and undo what one cocky developer did. So be conscientious, okay? Encourage that developer that's thumbing his nose and saying, I don't have to. Encourage him to do the right thing, okay?